Hey, everybody. Thank you for attending our webinar, Adopting Intel-Led Threat Protection with Microsoft Defender Threat Intelligence. I'm Michael Browning, Senior Product Marketing Manager for Microsoft Defender Threat Intelligence, or MDTI, how we'll be referring to it in this session. And with me is Dennis Mercer, Senior Program Manager, who is going to lead you through some really awesome demos on MDTI later in the session. So I want everyone on the call here to leave with a few things. Learn how Microsoft Defender Threat Intelligence, MDTI, can help build an early warning system for threats. Understand how to leverage the same raw intelligence Microsoft researchers use to get ahead of threats. Explore new finished intelligence available to understand adversaries as they evolve. And see how integrating MDTI with XDR and SIM solutions can proactively defend the organization from known threats. And Dennis will be showing examples of how you can leverage MDTI to search on threat activity that's known, connect known threat actors and tooling to an active attack, and create organizational specific intel to investigate an attack as it evolves in real time. Now, we'll start from the beginning here. I'm sure you've heard this a lot these days, and really not to belabor the point, but threats have fundamentally changed. Old cyber attacks, like ransomware in this case, were less impactful with less scope and less material damage. They had really broad targeting and narrow impact, and usually traditional controls like endpoint protection were sufficient. Things are different now. Threats are multifaceted and target the entire organization, and both material and reputational damage can and usually is catastrophic. Attacks are crossing modalities. As one of the largest cloud service providers in the world, we're constantly defending our own services. And because of that, we know how hard it is to really stay ahead and, current with current attacks and active attacks. Attackers now have new levels of skill and automation to evolve their techniques faster than we've ever seen in the past. And for security teams, taking action against threats needs to start sooner than ever before. It begins with visibility into the beginning of the kill chain, this arrow over here on the left, this green arrow, because attacks start at the reconnaissance setup and weaponization of websites and deployment of threat actor tooling. And this is where prevention should begin. And really, this is where your entire defense strategy should begin. So to have visibility into this recon and weaponization stage to proactively address threats, organizations need up-to-date, comprehensive threat intelligence. For this reason, threat intelligence is one of the largest areas of investment at Microsoft. And you can't remediate what you can't see. Microsoft Threat Intelligence is comprised of 65 trillion signals for an unimpeded view of attack vectors across the organization, that entire kill chain from left to right. From this recon and weaponization stage all the way across to prevention. So where does this telemetry actually come from? We have visibility across the world's largest clouds, 1.5 billion endpoints, and a continuously updated graph of the internet. We also have incident response engagements with some of the world's largest organizations and governments, so that we see, threats really on the front lines, so to speak. And, we have visibility into billions and billions of threats. So we see these threats up close and know exactly what's going on across the threat landscape. It's really important to mention, though, that this intelligence isn't just signal. It's really also human expertise. I know a lot of folks are familiar with Microsoft's depth and breadth of signal and how it's built into our security products. But there's also a strong human element of more than 8,000 experts and researchers working on our intelligence to have a wide variety of skills. And when that depth of signal meets that depth of expertise, really special things happen from a threat intelligence standpoint. So Microsoft's threat research teams comprise over 8,000 experts with a massive range of specialization. We take an interdisciplinary approach to threat intelligence. These threat experts specialize in threat actor research, reverse engineering, threat infrastructure research, endpoint threat research, ecosystem vulnerability research, incident response, you name it. But we also have experts in geopolitics and linguistics and law and policy and social engineering to give you that really holistic view, that really context-rich view of threats. Microsoft Threat Intelligence also covers 300 threat actor groups, including 160 nation states. Microsoft's threat research teams, across 77 countries and are fluent in, dozens of languages to give you that really broad view of the global threat landscape. But we can also take a really regional approach that enables us to truly understand threats. Also, we have a partner network of 15,000 strong, where we share crucial information and intelligence and are constantly working with them to share information. So if we look a little bit deeper into what and how, as far as how we track threats, at Microsoft, we take an adversary-centric approach to threat intelligence. So again, we use that multidisciplinary approach to our work. Our cybersecurity SMEs and applied scientists work alongside those experts that I described and listed in the previous slide to take a whole of adversary approach. And this helps us understand both the what and the why of an attack, as well as the where an attack might happen next. So our approach to delivering threat intelligence really focuses on making it accurate and reliable for that fast tactical response that's super relevant to your operations and actionable in your specific context as an organization. And recently, I'm sure some of you have noticed that we have introduced a new threat actor naming system. For a little context, and this will be useful for when Dennis goes over the Intel profiles later, I want to go over how we landed on these names. We needed a common taxonomy that would unify how we talk about threats, regardless of the type of threat or the motivation. This language that would make threat actor names more memorable, and it would scale to the inevitable growth of actors and threats as we track them. So after working through, several different ideas, we landed on the theme that meets all the criteria, which was weather. Why that? Well, there are a lot of common traits between weather and security. Both are often unpredictable, both have direct impact on our daily lives, both require consistent tracking and awareness. And to achieve quality forecasting, you really have to apply rigorous analysis and new cutting edge techniques. So, working off that theme of weather, we're starting to tie types of weather with certain nation states and actor motivations. Cutting across all our state-sponsored actors. For example, blizzard for Russia, sandstorm for Iran, typhoon for China. Financially motivated actors like ransomware are now associated with Tempest, and we even accommodate actors who are we're still forming an assessment on, um, and we call them storms. This means that weather can evolve into any other type, so we want to make sure that we have that latitude to do that when we start to get a better understanding of these threat actors. So quick example of how we're renaming some of the Russian state-sponsored actors with the new naming taxonomy. Nobelium here, one of the most sophisticated nation-state actors ever, is now Midnight Blizzard. Stronium, a Russian GRU-connected actor, is now Forest Blizzard. Actinium, a cyber espionage group that targets Ukraine, it's now Aqua Blizzard, so on and so forth. So before Dennis shows you some use cases, I want to talk about two new ways customers can leverage Microsoft Threat Intelligence via MDTI. We now have native integration of MDTI with Microsoft Defender. This means we can combine the trillions of signals Microsoft tracks across our services and endpoints with the breadth of real-time operational information that we continually and historically observe across the internet. M365 Defender users with an MDTI license will see two new tabs on the left: Intel Explorer and Intel Profiles. Intel Explorer is where you can query raw or finished threat intelligence based on really anything you want to know more about, as far as threat actors, IP addresses, script names. It'll return exclusive intel not published anywhere else. Intel profiles give you critical updated information, including the indicators of compromise, which is incredibly useful on threat actor groups and malicious tools that they are leveraging. Some of you folks may have seen us announce these things at Secure, but it's always worth, if you haven't yet, taking a look. So MBTI is how Microsoft customers can tap into this incredible intelligence to adopt an Intel-led approach and build an early warning system for threats. It's really the definitive source for quality insights to protect the world, to protect your organization from cyber threats. It gives the customers the same timely raw signal that Microsoft systems and researchers analyzed so that they can see how attackers are modifying their techniques. It's that clear visibility into that setup and weaponization phase that we talked about at the beginning. that green arrow on the left-hand side of the kill chain. Um, with MDTI, customers can directly access Microsoft Threat Intelligence in two ways. One, finished intelligence, some folks refer to as strategic. This includes articles, intel profiles about threat actors and tooling, activity snapshots from those 8,000 experts we talked about, informed by those 65 trillion signals. And these include updated tools, tactics, and procedures, or TTPs, recommendations and targeting, and associated IOCs, or indicators of compromise. Then there's the raw intelligence, some folks refer to as operational. MDTI's raw threat intelligence, it's created by mapping threat infrastructure across the internet every day. And that lets us locate relationships to known malicious infrastructure and tooling and backdoors. And this happens at an incredible scale, at an internet-wide scale. Customers can query these threat infrastructure relationships directly, again, or at scale via the API, to instantly know everything they need to know about a piece of threat tooling. Is it malicious? Is it tied to known threat groups? Is it tied to known attacks or certain threat tooling? What other infrastructure in general is it tied to? This is kind of where a security practitioner would start when they want to know anything about any piece of threat infrastructure of interest. So Intel profiles, another new feature we launched at Secure. They're finished intelligence on threats facing your organization. So everything we know about actors, tools, they're in here. Our cross-discipline teams have been tracking hundreds of threat actors for decades, as I described. This includes nation-state actors, cyber criminals using ransomware, et cetera. And we are continuously updating these Intel profiles in real time, so your team always knows what we know about them. They allow you to rapidly identify adversary threat infrastructure with actionable indicators and TTPs drawn directly from threat infrastructure. This includes history, distribution, trends, and also guided insights from our researchers, from those experts. The examples Dennis will show in a second involve living intelligence, and he'll link threat patterns and methods to known threat actors, to whom we assign these profiles. Real quick, before we get into some lengthier use cases, I want to explain how MDTI intelligence can be an early warning system for threats. With MDTI, even before our finished intelligence is published, you'll be able to see some of the raw data that our analysts are tracking on active attacks as they unfold. You can see how attackers are modifying their techniques. And this offers that clear visibility into the setup and weaponization phase that we talked about, into that threat infrastructure out there on the open internet that has never traversed your network, that's never touched your network. It's purely preemptive. For example, even if we detect and block the domain a threat actor successfully used in a phishing attack, by the time you've done that, they probably modified their methods. They probably spun up hundreds of new domains to stay ahead of detection. A quick example of how Microsoft data enables proactive threat hunting, to carry out a ransomware attack, an attacker may set up domains that look exactly like your organization's. They'll spoof it. They'll literally pull components from your websites, like images and icons, to make it look truly authentic, to make it look exactly like yours. However, these newly spun up domains that have not yet been used in an attack, they can be linked with what we call host pairs. It's a derived data set at MDTI. So you can now block them before the attack reaches your doorstep, or even prevent it before it takes hold again. Dennis will talk more about host pairs a little later. But now, as the attacker scans and searches your infrastructure, you have that clear insight into that reconnaissance effort, that setup and weaponization stage that's all the way on the left-hand side of that kill chain that we discussed. So here's a visual example of how this works. Host pairs is just one example of how intelligence and MDTI enables security teams to turn the tables on attackers. It enables them to track and understand the attack as it evolves, particularly in relation to how they might be targeting your specific organization. And they do this with a technique called infrastructure chaining. So starting with a single malicious indicator, like a piece of malware, using MDTI data sets enables you to connect threat infrastructure. And this is done with that continuously updated map of the external threat landscape that we discussed. That's part of this really rich Microsoft telemetry. This is powerful because we're crawling the entire internet for those signals. So as an attacker interacts with the internet to launch their campaign, they leave behind clues as to who they are, and these signals help us to really forensically trace them as they tactically stage and execute attacks. Take a previously unknown attack with a weaponized email containing malware, for example. First, the email itself contains a lot of metadata and clues. The sender's domain, to links in the message itself. And we can see that malware from the email is calling out to a command and control server with an IP address, and that IP address in turn has an SSL certificate on it. You can see how this starts to all chain together. The cert is associated with an additional IP address, and some of those points to domains, pointed domains, sorry. So now we know that even though the domain might be different, they're part of the same attack, and you can start to like really link together what that attacker's footprint looks like, so that you can start to be really proactive in how you address this attacker. With MDTI, you're able to map their actions with their signal, basically, to take measures to inoculate your organization against it, against that threat actor or attack before it ever takes hold. So I'm going to pass it over to Dennis. He's going to run through a few demos, searching on known threat activity, how you can connect known threat actors and tooling to an active attack, and how to create organization-specific intel to investigate an evolving attack. And that's all going to use the features and techniques that I discussed so far. So Dennis, take it away. And you're still on mute. I don't know if.
Thank you. I was about like 5 or 6 words into my demo here. So, hey, great. So for this demonstration, the first part, I'm going to use the diamond model for threat intelligence. Okay, it's based on the diamond model for intrusion analysis. It's an approach employed by information security professionals to identify, to understand and correlate key aspects of an attack during a cyber incident. Now, this diamond model was developed in 2013 by Sergio, and I'm probably going to mispronounce his name. So, Categorni, I'm going to mess up his last name. Categorni. I'm sorry. I'll probably get some mail from Sergio later about messing up his last name. But the other two are Andrew Pendergast and Christopher Betts. So we can use this diamond model to assist with threat intelligence by identifying intelligence gaps that we have, developing taxonomies, and knowledge management of threats to your organization. This methodology is a highly effective tool for threat intelligence analysts seeking to stay ahead of evolving cyber threats. So this diamond model underlines the relationship between 4 components of the diamond: the adversary, their capabilities, their infrastructure, and the victim. Now, when we're talking about the adversary, it's anyone seeking to compromise your system or networks to progress towards their objectives. Now, adversaries, they can be, like Michael said, nation states. They could be cyber criminal groups that are conducting ransomware attacks. They could be hacktivists, terrorists. Sometimes they're just individuals or groups trying to make a name for themselves. They also could be a combination thereof. So nation states and cyber criminal activity leads me to North Korea. They're heavily sanctioned by the UN. They're a nation state who uses cyber criminal activity to steal money to support their whatever they're doing for their government, building weapons and missile systems. So let's go on here. Infrastructure. So when we're talking about infrastructure, it's not your IT infrastructure. It's the infrastructure, the physical or logical networks, computers, or servers used to carry out an attack against the victim. Now, this may include command and control servers used by the adversary. It could be web servers where they're staging malware. It can be other networks, domains, or compromised computers that they're using to pivot towards the victim. Capabilities. This refers to the tools and techniques employed by the adversary in their attack on the victim. So Leads us down to the last one, the victim. This is the target of the adversary in which the infrastructure and the capabilities are being employed against. This can be individuals, corporations, both large and small, entire sectors, verticals of business, nonprofits, or government organizations. So with this right here, I want to take a look at a recent attack, the Move It attack, some folks will call it, using the diamond model. Now, in this case here, the actor is going to be what we track as Lace Tempest. And again, how Michael said Tempest would be cyber criminal groups. It's a cyber criminal group known to conduct ransomware operations. They target organizations across a diverse array of industries. They traditionally use phishing campaigns to expose public-facing file transfer servers vulnerabilities to obtain their initial access. Once they get initial access, Lace Tempest often drops Cobalt Strike using a hands-on compromise. The attack culminates in the deployment of the CLOP ransomware. Lace Tempest overlaps with several activities other security companies and organizations might call Fin11 or TA 505 or the CLOP ransomware group. So according to open source information, beginning in May of 2023, Lace Tempest began exploiting a previously unknown SQL injection vulnerability. It's CVE 2023-34362. This is a vulnerability in the Progress Software's Managed File Transfer, or MFT, solution, known as Move It Transfer. Internet-facing Move It Transfer applications were affected with a web shell named Phantom, also known as Lemur Loot, and we'll see that later on. This web shell is then used to steal data from the underlying Move It Transfer database. We've also seen in the same activity, Lace Tempest has been trying to conduct zero-day exploit-driven campaigns against other file transfer applications. So current reporting puts victims of this campaign at around 400 different organizations, ranging from several large corporations, several smaller businesses across different verticals, a few U.S. government agencies, as well as governmental organizations across the world. So right quick, I'm going to stop sharing. I'm going to pivot into actually MDTI. And like Michael said, we've also expanded into, or not expanded, we've also, you can access MDTI through the M365 Defender portal. So that's what I'm showing you right here. So there's different ways you can lead into Lace Tempest. One, you can search for Lace Tempest in the bar here. You can also search for Move It, and that'll bring up this attack here. Link to Lace Tempest and their Phantom web shell. You can also bring up the CVE. So let's go back and take a look real quick. Well, I want to start right here with the CVE. So the CVE here is in the traditional or the old TI Defender portal. It's going to give you a quick description of the CVE. Highlights that it's part of this Move It Transfer attack. It can also talk about the components and then give you the related articles to that CVE. But in the M365 Defender portal, there is Microsoft Defender Vulnerability Management. So that's also going to be down here in the Vulnerability Management blade. It's going to give you the CVE. It's going to give you the same description. We're feeding the same intelligence from both platforms. But if you were using this, you'll be able to see any exposed devices, vulnerable software, security recommendations related to your own network. So I'm going to move back to the Intel profile. So once we're here, we get to see a snapshot or description of Lace Tempest. It's going to talk about Lace Tempest and how they operate. Gives them the information about them. Targeting details. This is talking about how they're opportunistic in nature. So with this, you're getting a look at the information that's the adversary and the victim corners of the diamond model. So once we've done that, now we can move into the indicators. Indicators, or IOCs, are going to be your infrastructure. And right here, we can see that there's 29 different indicators. They range from SHA-256 hashes, IP addresses and domains. Again, this is the infrastructure corner, but these IOCs are important for your security analysts and your threat hunters. So threat hunting is that art and science of detecting adversaries that have, they have traversed your traditional layered network defense. They're inside your network and they're operating. So without this intelligence pointing to additional IOCs, if you have just a single IP address, you're just hunting for a dark object in a dark room wearing sunglasses. But with this intelligence here, the light is now on. You can search for the rest of their IOCs, and then you can either confirm that they are in your network or be confident that they're not in your network. Zero trust philosophy here, always assume breach. So they're going to continue to look for this type of behavior, look for this type of indicators of compromise. Now, if we go over to the TTPs, again, this is the capabilities part of the diamond model. So when we're looking at this, we're starting to get some more information about how Lace Tempest operates. So it's going to come down here, explain different aspects, and I'm not going to read the whole thing to you, but you can come in here and read about how they've been aligned to the Clop ransomware gang. Their data exfiltration, extortion. They've been known for the double extortion. So this gives you a more holistic look at Lace Tempest, being that's the diamond models being developed for you here. Now, I do want to pivot over here to the Move It. So if you were just able to show, or excuse me, search on Move It, you would be able to see that Lace Tempest has been associated with them. And then also this Phantom Web Shell. This is going to take us into Intel profiles, but it's going to take us into the tools section of the Intel profiles. So you're going to be able to come in here and read a snapshot about the Phantom Web Shell. But like we were talking about earlier, they're also known for using Cobalt Strike. So if we move over to the tools section, we can come down here and pivot into Cobalt Strike. Now, Cobalt Strike is a very powerful tool. It's used by many legitimate corporations that doing pen testing, vulnerability assessments on organizations, but it's very powerful, and your adversaries are going to use it as well. So it's going to give you all the information that we have on Cobalt Strike, as well as 58,000, a little over 58,000 indicators that you can download and then start to search for any type of communications with command and control servers or anything like that with anybody using Cobalt Strike. So now that I've talked about that, I want to do the other parts of this demonstration. So right now we're looking at Microsoft Sentinel. It could be any SIM of your choice, but we're Microsoft here, so I'm going to show you starting with Sentinel and how we can get a better understanding and threat intelligence based on attacks that are currently happening. Now, this is a demo environment, so if you're on another threat platform and you're trying to double check us against that, it might not be there. So the first thing I'm going to look at here is this multi-stage incident involving privilege escalation. And so it gives you a quick information, but let's view the full details of this incident. Okay, so now that we're in the incident, you can see some of the timestamps of what is going on. So we have some information about privilege escalation and ransomware attack. But what I want to show you is how we can use playbooks. So in this case here, we're using the MDTI API, and we've created a playbook that does enrichment on this event. So if you run the playbook, it's going to come back and tell you that, hey, this is the URL that was searched on. This is the IP address in question. And it comes back as a classification of malicious with a score of 100. In this case here, these are some of the rules that fired to bring this or give us this classification of malicious. And it looks like they're using Cobalt Strike. It might be a command and control server. It could be other things within that are noted as an IOC or indicator of compromise for Cobalt Strike. And it looks like it's Silk Typhoon. So Typhoon being out of China. And it's going to give you some more information about this incident. Now, if you were an analyst and you were starting to see some of this information here, this might pull your attention to this incident, and you might want to work this one first. So I'm going to go back to Microsoft Sentinel and show you another one here. So in this case here, we have an entity that appears to be a host pair for new big data.science, which is involved in phishing attacks. So I want to look at the full details. And like Michael said, host pairs are someone that's using a site and they're reaching a parent is reaching into a child to pull back some information. That could be a picture. It could be a analytic tracker or anything like that, because sometimes adversaries are lazy. They just copy the page with its trackers and all that information back into their attack page or their information gathering page. And in this case here, we see the entity, but we want to pivot from Sentinel back into MDTI and take a look at this domain here. So this domain here, account tac verify taci.ml, we can see that it has a malicious score, or excuse me, a malicious classification with a score of 100. It was last seen on this date here. And some of the rules that fired. Now, what's really cool is we have a detonation. Now, URL detonation, a hash detonation, you may or may not have one in your investigation, but in this case here, we do have one on the URL. Came back as a 200, which meant it was successful, and the IP that's resolving to, but we can actually click on here and pivot, and we can see what was presented to the victim or the potential victim, one of your employees. It's a Microsoft login page. So if they weren't following their phishing training, or they didn't recognize this as a phishing attempt, they put their information in there. They've now provided the adversary with that initial access in which they can come into your network and then try to escalate their privileges. Again, remember, we're talking about Lace Tempest. What do they use a lot? Phishing attacks. So this would be something that will go along with what they have done. And the one other thing that I wanted to talk about is projects. So projects are the ability for, in this case here, this is my team project, or excuse me, my project, but you could have team projects, which is shared across teams. My project here, right here, is just a demo in which I was starting to pull information about Lace Tempest. So you could build this project, share it amongst your team, and this allows you to do a collaborative investigation of an entity or an incident, or if you want to just track something. So in this case here, if you have a Move It application within your own network, or you have some other kind of file transfer application within your network, and you want to be able to track that type of information, you can come in here and do that. And all you do is once you search on a different IP or a domain or something like that, you'll be given the option to add that artifact to your project. Now, I've gone over a lot of different information here about how you can use the diamond model for threat intelligence, using the Intel profiles to build out that diamond model. The integrations that we have with Sentinel, it works with other SIMs as well, as you can use the MDTI API to pull information in, and then how to continue to investigate based on using projects. And this is the end of my demo. For any additional information or resources, please see the MDTI block area in the security community page or our GitHub. So thank you so much for your time and attention.
Thanks, Dennis. Appreciate it. So yeah, how can you begin getting ahead of attacks yourself? How can you implement everything that Dennis just went over? You really need every tool in your arsenal kind of to do it, to stay ahead of adversaries these days. Their attacks will continue to evolve. And you need the latest information to really adopt and execute on that intel-led approach to security. So here's how you can get started with MDTI. First, integrate with your tools and workflows. Be sure to integrate MDTI into your SIM. Dennis showed what it looks like with Microsoft Sentinel. Be sure to start to leverage MDTI for an M365 Defender user. We recently launched an API for MDTI that went GA on July 1st. Licensed users can query Microsoft Threat Intelligence at scale with any SIM, obviously including Microsoft Sentinel. And be sure to enable the enrichment playbooks that leverage the API. This can be enabled in the Sentinel Content Hub. Licensed customers can automatically enrich incidents with everything MDTI knows about a threat, which Dennis demonstrated, including that reputation score that helps really triage that incident automatically and help kind of scale your incident response output. We have since introduced new playbooks, which I'll go over in a little bit. There's also an MDTI data connector where in Sentinel, where Microsoft researchers will continually add all publicly available IOCs from MDTI, from the MDTI Finish Intelligence. And this goes into the Microsoft Sentinel TI Blade for free for Sentinel users. So those users can access these IOCs, which are really valuable for driving analytics, hunting, and investigations. And then you have the MDTI analytics rule. This is a built-in rule enabled in Microsoft Sentinel that takes URLs, domains, and IPs from your environment via log data and checks them against known bad IOCs from MDTI. So when there's a match, an incident is automatically created and the data is written to the Microsoft Sentinel TI Blade. So by enabling this rule, very easy, just switch it on. Sentinel users know they have detections in place for all the threats that are known to Microsoft. Okay, so adopting an intel-led approach, this involves delivering intelligence in context with investigations. So, use threat intelligence to better understand the threat landscape and how adversaries operate and target your industry. Enable threat intelligence within Microsoft Sentinel and Microsoft 365 Defender, as I mentioned, to stay ahead of evolving attacks so that you know what we know. And if you are wanting to try Microsoft Threat Intelligence directly, you can also access the most current 2 weeks of data for free at ti.defender.microsoft.com. And you can visit our tech community page to keep up to date with our new releases and content around MDTI. Everything that is new as far as new features, best practices, everything that we want you to know that we think will enrich your experience with MDTI, we post to the tech community. So make sure you check that out. Also, be sure to get access to our GitHub repository, which has a wide range of solutions that include workbooks and playbooks. We've recently added new ones around incident response and threat hunting, enrichment, and automation. We'll be launching a blog about this actually today or tomorrow by Sean Wasanga on the tech community page for MDTI. So be sure to give that a read. And we're also keen on people looking to contribute to our GitHub repository themselves. If you have a solution leveraging MDTI that you'd like to see in our GitHub repository, please send an email to mdti-pm@microsoft.com. Thanks so much, everybody. Really appreciate you joining the webinar, and we apologize for the technical difficulties for those who tried to join live. This will be on the YouTube page for the tech community quite shortly. So again, thanks for joining, and we hope that you enjoyed it. We have a discussion space on the tech community page. So if you do have any questions or comments about the webinar, we'll be happy to answer those in that space. So please do that. Thank you.